It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Hey, what's up, my spooky family? We're back with another episode of Slashers in Sync. Sadly, Marva won't be joining us on this episode. She's been sick for the past couple of weeks and she lost her voice, which is kind of interesting because we don't usually get that sick, at least to that point. And we don't want to strain her voice too much, so she'll be taking a break this week. However, she will be back next week. We have a fun February planned covering films that are Valentine's themed. We also have Hard Eyes coming out in theaters pretty soon, so that should be fucking awesome. But, before we get into today's episode, I wanted to plug our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, IG, and Twitter. You can find us with Slashers in Sync or Slash in Sync. Any of those two should work. And if not, you can go down below and check out all the links in the description and find us everywhere. Follow us for all things horror. We're even looking into covering more cons and horror exhibits for you guys this year. So overall, everything should be pretty exciting this year, man. And I can't wait to bring content to you guys. But y'all saw the title, we're covering Clown from 2014. Now, this was directed by John Watts, and I believe it was produced by Eli Roth. Eli Roth also stars in it, so I think he had a hand in this film overall. This film also stars Peter Stormare, Laura Allen, and Andy Powers. Peter's pretty known being, I think, in John Wick. He was in Fargo, Constantine. So pretty well-known actor, and it was cool to see him in this film, especially with the role that he plays. And we'll get into all of that as we continue talking about Clown. The movie starts off with a bunch of comical clown decorations for a birthday, it seems. And as the credits continue rolling, we see more of the decor and the sounds of kids screaming and playing. Now, this does almost seem kind of haunting, if you will. And I don't even know if it was supposed to be. I'm assuming it is since this is a horror film, but just the way they, I guess, used the sound design for this scene just really made something as simple as kids just running around outside the house or inside the house just sound like a fucking scary thing, man. The audience hears a conversation between two women and it's about how her husband hasn't come for the party yet. The camera then pans to Meg and she fully confirms to the woman she's talking to, which happens to be her sister, that she's pregnant again. The two talk about how Meg hasn't shared the information to Kent yet, her husband, due to him working on another site and just being busy in general, because that is the kind of consensus we get throughout this film. And just the assumption of Kent is that he is a loving father, but he's also very busy. Meg's father comes into the scene and makes a passive-aggressive comment about her husband not being present, and when she's about to give her response, she gets a phone call. Now, her father is like a dick throughout most of this film, and I really don't know why. I'm assuming it's just because of the fact that he hears how Kent is never around. So I can see maybe from that point of view, but we're never specifically told why. And it always just seems like he's a hater for most of this fucking film, and he's just always coming after Kent. And it's kind of interesting to me, but yeah. At first, you think it might be her husband calling just to let her know that he's going to be late. And you know how that story goes. We see that happen in a lot of films. And that's even the way the movie sets it up. And you find out, no, it's actually not her husband. And it's something else completely. Meg calls Kent with the news that she just got. And it turns out that the company they used to book the clown for her son's birthday party also booked him for another party. And he won't be able to make it. Ken, who is still at work, he freaks out over it. I think he even drops like a funny little bar about like who double books a clown, right? So he's feeling bummed out. He doesn't know what to do. At the work site that Kent is at, which I'm assuming is the property he's clearing and cleaning out, he stumbles upon a chest and finds a clown costume. All right, there you go, clown costume fell right into his lap. He puts it on, goes home, and acts like a clown for his son, so he doesn't get disappointed on his birthday, and all of his friends aren't let down or nothing like that, and Kent really comes in and saves the day. So yeah, fuck you, Dad. Once the party is over and everyone's left, Jack is knocked out on the floor, and the mom takes him up, and when she comes back down, yeah, they try to get it on the couch and, get intimate, but May can't take it seriously because Kent is still in his costume. He even makes like a funny little joke about let's make a clown baby, which I can tell Meg was not fucking with, and sadly, come on, brother. I mean, I wouldn't have made that joke, so, and I'm just kidding. Kent ends up falling asleep on the couch, and Meg is upstairs, so he's all alone. And what do you know? When he wakes up, the costume is still on him, and it seems to be even tighter than what it was yesterday. Meg also has to run to work, and she has to do it pretty quickly, so Kent is left to take their son to school. And we even get this funny scene where he has to step out of the car because Jack forgot his lunch, and Kent pretty much showcases to the entire school that he is dressed up like a clown still. Throughout the rest of the day, he's trying to take off the makeup, suit, and hair in a multitude of ways. Kent even goes as far to try and cut the suit with a handsaw. And this is, of course, after he makes it to his work site and he gets clowned at by the workers because, again, he's in a clown suit. He ends up cutting himself with that handsaw. Blood squirts everywhere. Like, he cannot take this suit off. And you're getting the idea that this suit is not just getting tighter, but it might be merging with Kent's body. Kent comes back home telling May that he can't take the suit off or even the makeup, and he's pretty much just crashing out. The two try and take off the red nose that seems to be stuck on Kent's nose, and she ends up using, I guess, what seems to be some medical equipment. I think it's mentioned that she's like a dentist or she's like a nurse or something like that, and she uses some equipment to pull the nose off, and when she does, blood squirts out. It seems like she took a tip off of his nose, and the dog ends up eating the red clown nose, which is ill, but I mean, that happens. Kent ends up going to the ER, and the doctor really doesn't take him seriously and just tells him just to shower with warm water, and that should help melt the glue away, and, just doesn't really help Kent at all. We even get a scene where Kent is in the shower, and he's just literally on the floor. Dude's, like, just depressed. He's in depresso mode, and I would be too, man. I mean, he even made a comment about how he hasn't even been able to pee yet. So, yeah, I'd be pissed off. Now, as time is passing, it's getting more and more obvious something is wrong, and Kent is becoming more and more like a clown. Even the wig is forming to Kent's head. And with all this bullshit happening, Kent decides to take matters into his own hands, and he calls all the costume stores around the city. He even drives to a few of them just to kind of get some idea of where this suit might have come from. He also takes the time to look into the previous owner of the house too. When he's making his rounds around town and just calling costume shops, he ends up talking to Carlson, the owner of the house that Kent is selling and found the costume in. While he's on the phone with Carlson, he emphasizes that Kent should not put on the costume, but finds out it's too late. He even gives a pretty interesting, reason as to why the costume might be sticking in the first place, which if this wasn't a, supernatural psychological horror film, it might have made some sense, which is the fibers of the suit are just so old, and when they mesh with a warm skin, they melt in and just start to merge with you. So it kind of makes sense, and Kent kind of, has a breath of fresh air, and he's just huge relief, and he's ready to go get this suit off, and he takes off towards Carlson. Carlson tells Kent about the lure of the cloyne, an Icelandic demon to which is the costume Kent is wearing at this moment, because it's the demon's fucking skin. It's not a costume. Now, what's interesting about the cloyne is that it's the idea that it was this demon who lived in the, northern regions, and he lived in a very high mountain, and he would come and take a child and eat them essentially. And this child was supposed to be sort of a sacrifice, if you will. It was one child for every, or 5 children for the 5 months of winter or something like that. And it's an interesting backstory. I haven't tried to find too much lore on the cloyne, but it is interesting to kind of see what this film created in that aspect, and it kind of makes you just hate clowns even more if you already were scared of them. Carlson ends up drugging Kent, revealing that decapitation is the only way you can stop the demon for good. And as he was just about to basically cut off Kent's head, Kent comes to, he flips the script, he beats the shit out of Carlson, and he ties him up. Now I get it, Kent may be a demon, but if I was about to get my head chopped off, I probably would have acted the same way. I mean, let's be honest. He drives Carlson, who's tied up in the backseat of his car, home so he can go to his wife. He comes in, his wife is there, so is his father-in-law, his sister-in-law, and I believe her husband. And he just looks like he's crashing down in front of everybody. He's going crazy. Someone tried to kill me. There's this book about a demon, just spouting all this shit. No one knows what's going on, which I'm not going to hold you. The wife really didn't do too much here to kind of back him up. I mean, she basically saw that when she pulled off a piece of this costume, it took his fucking skin off. So I feel like she shouldn't have acted so out of place there. It just kind of came off like she didn't know what was going on. And it's like, I mean, you know what's going on. He can't get this suit off. I'm sure he probably even has mentioned that he was going to try and find out the origin of the suit too. So it's like, I don't know. It just came off like a little bit like everyone was against Kent here. And I don't think that should have been the case. Everyone, of course, just tries to confront Kent. And as Kent is showing Carlson, who's tied up outside in his back seat, that's when I guess his brother-in-law comes up to him and tries to just rip the wig off. Doesn't work. Fucking obviously. Make sure to said something. And as he does that, Kent grabs his arm and just with complete ease, just cracks the bone right out of his skin. He fucks this dude up. And that just shows how strong Kent is and just how much more of a different entity he's becoming. Because at this point, it's really unsure if he even is human. He's got the appearance of a human so far, but he's definitely turning into something different. He ends up just getting in the car, taking off with Carlson. And there's this funny scene where he's like, oh yeah, man, you're in so much trouble. You tried to kill me. The cops are going to have their way with you. It's like, you're in so much trouble, buddy. I don't know. That scene just kind of made me laugh. But they're doing that whole shtick. He's driving to the police station. But before he can do that, he literally starts to change. We're visually at this point seeing his body just undergo some change. And due to this, he crashes the car and Carlson just drops his bar that it's just best for him to kill himself now because the process is pretty much there and everyone's going to be fucked. Kent runs into the woods trying to get away from everything. And as more time passes, the hungrier he gets. There's even a scene where Kent comes across, I believe, someone who's in the Boy Scouts. And this poor dude was just going out to clean his leftover dish that was, I guess, dirty from dinner. And he's out there all by himself in the middle of the fucking woods. It's dark as shit. Kent's over there and Kent says he's hungry. The boy brings him over some food. Again, I feel so bad for this dude. And Kent bites his freaking fingers off, man. Just takes a fucking chomp at his hand. And of course the boy goes screaming and that makes Kent leave. Since Kent can't go home, he comes to the idea that it's time for him to find a place. And he ends up going to what we believe is one of his properties. And he ends up just kind of chilling there. Of course, there ends up being a kid that lives at one of these properties. And he takes a liking to Kent, probably because Clint looks like a clown or... I mean, to be honest, he looks like a fucked up clown, man. But either way, the kid takes a liking to him and they have multiple funny little encounters where the kid's trying to bring him food. The kid hears his stomach growl, so he tries bringing him just different types of food and it's pretty hilarious. And there's even some stuff with Jack and Meg and just how, Jack misses his father and just little things like that. But at this point, the real story is about the change that's happening with Kent. And Kent has had it and he doesn't want to become what he knows he's about to become because he's aware of the demon, clawing, whether he wants to admit it or not, that is there in his subconscious, and he decides to take his own life. He literally puts a gun to his mouth, bullet right through the back of the head, and he is still alive. He comes to within moments. By the way, the blood that Kent has is rainbow colored, so I guess clown again, if you will, but I don't know, that I just thought that was an interesting touch to make the dude's blood rainbowish color. I thought that was pretty funny. And he ends up trying different ways to kill himself after the gun doesn't work. He even comes up with like this makeshift, like there's a saw there and like two things are holding the saw still so he can fall on it and decapitate himself, just like what Carlson was trying to do earlier in the film. However, everything takes a turn when the kid somehow gets into the property or the apartment, if you will. And yeah, in this huge shenanigan type of situation, the saw ends up going straight to the kid, cutting him, I believe, what seems to be either in half or just taking a huge chunk of his stomach out. He dies, and Kent, because he is hungry, he's got the urges, he's basically like half demon at this point, he ends up consuming this entire kid's body. Meg was driving around because at one point she made it her mission to go find him. She even, I think, left her son with either her sister or her father. So she is going around from property to property, literally just right down on the list, just checking them off. And she finally makes it to the one that Kent is at. And Kent tells Meg that he needs to be tied up and that he needs help. Meg, not knowing what to do, takes him back home, ties him up in the basement, and Kent tells Meg not to let him loose no matter what. The camera ends up cutting to Jack, and he's at school, and you can tell Jack is, even though he's got friends, he is kind of like that loner kid, and we see that he's being bullied by a bunch of older kids and calling him all sorts of different stuff, and even making fun of Kent for being a clown or like dressed up as a clown. After getting into a fight with one of the bullies, Jack runs home, and he was supposed to be picked up by his aunt, but that wasn't the case. Since he got into this fight, he left school prematurely, ran back to the house, and that's where he meets Kent. Or, as what the movie wants us to know, this isn't Kent. This is in fact the cloyne talking. Now, Kent, or the cloyne, gets word from Jack, and pretty much convinces him to let him loose. And when he does that, Kent goes after the bully, Colton. We get this funny scene where Colton is like, it looks like Halo or like a knockoff of Halo where he's playing that. And as I guess Kent is stalking him in the house, his friends are just dropping so much shit on how much of a dick Colton is to Kent's son. So it just further fuels Kent or the cloyne just to attack this dude and possibly not just eat him, but just literally rip him to shreds. Meg ends up coming across the journal that Carlson had, reading through all the texts about the cloyne. She goes after him while he's in the hospital and gets him to explain about the curse and how that ties to Kent. However, Carlson is not cooperating, essentially. Later on, when she gets back to the house, she finds out that Jack is there, but Kent is not. He was let loose. And that's when the dog, who has also changed into like a mini little fucking demon because he ate the red nose, runs at Meg, but Carlson ends up chopping his head off. Decapitation again, kills the demon. And that's where Carlson, I guess, starts to explain what exactly happened and what all those notes mean. Carlson shares that his brother had made a deal with the demon, and since his brother worked at a hospital that essentially there was a ward where there was kids who were dying from different illnesses, mainly cancer, he took the 5 that were closest to death and he gave those kids to the demon, and the demon ended up, I guess, being satisfied with the sacrifices, and he was able to give Carlson back to his brother. Carlson was able to take the costume off, and when he woke up, he didn't really remember anything except for when he put the costume on, and there you go. So he shares that that's the only way you can pretty much survive this if you don't want to go down the route of decapitation. The two then go after Kent in hopes of containing him, but Kent ends up killing more kids in what seems to be like some sort of Chuck E. Cheese. So I'm just going to refer to it as that. It's Chuck E. Cheese. And we get this gnarly scene where like a blood of like pool just comes out of the slide into like the ball pin. Like it was a pretty crazy scene. Everyone goes insane. Everyone's, busting through doors and leaving. Women are screaming. Kids are crying. And Meg is able to come across Kent, but pretty much looks like the cloyne now, if you will. And the cloyne tells her, if you can give me one more kid, because he's already eaten most, if you give me one more kid, I'll let your husband go. And she decides that she wants to go ahead and go down this route so she can get her husband back. At some point, the cloyne just knocked out Carlson and the cops pull up, and I'm pretty sure the cops either arrest him or kill him and pin everything on him, essentially, that he's the one who went after those kids and has been causing a mess in the city recently. There's this kid who finds Meg amidst the chaos, and she seems to recognize her from her time at the doctor's office or dentist's office, and she ends up going with her. And she drives this girl to the location where the cloyne told them to meet, but she ultimately cannot sacrifice this little girl, and she realizes that the cloyne actually didn't want this little girl. It was going after Jack. Now, she had left Jack with her father and told her father to leave town, like just get the fuck out of here. But nah, this guy wants to go back to the house and have a talk with Kent. I swear, bro. Some people, bro. Some people. She ends up making it back to the house in time. The father gets killed by the cloyne, and we get this cool shot of, in like good lighting, because at the Chuck E. Cheese there was all sorts of like, RGB rainbow lights. So in good lighting, you get to see exactly what the cloyne looks like, and it's fucking terrifying, man. Like really fucking terrifying. And the cloyne and Meg square off and get into this huge fight, chase up and down the house, fight in the basement, etc. And Jack and Meg are able to finally tie up the cloyne again, and Meg chops his head off and kills cloyne, and Kent is gone too. And it's a very sad scene because when the costume pretty much, I guess, or when the cloyne himself evaporates or just disapparates back into the skin and into the hair, you can see Kent. So that's a very sad scene, especially since both Meg and Jack were still in the basement when that happened. So they pretty much saw their dead husband / father. And again, that's just pretty fucked up. And that's really what this film was. While it may not be the most goriest it may not be the goriest horror film of all time, it definitely can fuck you up in the head, man. Because all in all, this really shouldn't have happened to Kent. He's a good dude. Like, he was very much a protagonist. He was a main character. This dude did what he needed to do for his children or for his kid. He loved his wife. He went up and beyond. Like, this really should not have happened to this guy. He was genuinely a good person, and it sucks to see that this is just the way it ended. Now, we see that the skin and the costume is being stored in an evidence box and pretty much hinted at that it's still there. And who knows, man, someone might don that suit in the future. But either way, this was Clown 2014. This was a pretty good horror film. If you haven't seen it, I can recommend it to you wholeheartedly. Like I said, it's not going to be that gory. It doesn't even have like the jump scares that you think it should have, but it really gets you with just the performances, and it gets you with just how psychological torture is what this film really is, man. Like, it really fucks you up in the head as you're watching it, because it's just one-upping itself in each scene. And again, this is not like a family that really deserved this, and that's what just makes it even worse as you get to the end of this film. But overall, if y'all have seen Clown, let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought. And if you have any other recommendations for other horror films, drop them down below as well. We're always on the lookout for that. And without further ado, this has been the Slashes and Stink podcast. So make sure to follow us on other platforms and keep up to date with us on the podcast and all things horror. I will talk to y'all guys next time.